not just look online and find loads of other policies and think you need to match these, and instead think yourself clearly about the entire information flow, or the flow of personal information, from how do you collect it, like how do you gather this data, where do you store it, do you transfer it any places, all the way up to the deletion routines. So the whole life cycle of the information or the personal data, think about that in all the aspects, and then think about how do you secure and protect this information throughout the life cycle. People are so sharing like so many details and informations about themselves, but like knowing as soon as you put it online, there is a risk that it could end up in some other places or get into the wrong hands. And like she heard her daughter voice, and the daughter was like crying and super scared, saying like she's been kidnapped. And then all of a sudden this guy took the phone and told the mom like, we have your daughter, like transfer $1 million by the like in 4 hours, or like we'll drug her, we'll rape her, like do all these things.
Hello everyone, welcome to the another episode of TACOS, where we'll be talking about community, open source, cybersecurity with some of the finest mind from the ecosystem. Today we have with us Gray, she is a cybersecurity consultant with experience in building and maintaining secure information in security management software for startups and enterprise organizations. She has achieved ISO 27001 and ISO 27701 certification, and she's passionate about raising awareness and share her knowledge about her experience in the field of cyber technology. So let's welcome Gray to Tacos. Very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Feel free to add if I miss anything, because when I was going through your profile, I was amazed by a lot of things that you have been doing. So feel free to add if I miss anything.
No, I think it was a great introduction. Definitely the highlights.
Yes, and I'm glad to have the conversation with you, because you are my second person from the cybersecurity field, and cybersecurity is always being very much wider domain, but uh, wider in the sense that so many categories and people tend to get confused to go in which direction, because in the cybersecurity there will be application security, server security, there will be intelligence, there will be forensics, right? So we were going to discuss about that points for sure, but before that, I just wanted to know your experience of building secure information and systems in this startups. So could you please share more information about that?
Yes, definitely. So there's often a misconception with the ISO 27001 that it's only fit for large or enterprise organizations. But like the key thing with the standard is that it fits all, because the main thing is understanding the context of your business. Like, who are you as a business, and what are your values, and how can you go about protecting these? And by doing it in that order, you can get the ultimate management system that fits your company and your needs to stay protected.
Okay. So when let's say when you work with the startups and the same at the same level, enterprise level as well, so how much they were aware, or let's say curious to implement this practices? Because I've seen in the startups mostly they don't follow when they're building the products. So how much it is important to do so, and let's say what are the challenges that you face while implementing to do so?
Well, if you're a startup, most likely you will not have much things in place. And then to
Mhm.
build a secure management system, you kind of need to build the ground base first. Like if we take the control of screening, for example, that you screen people before you hire them. Then if you're a startup, maybe you haven't defined the recruitment process, and there's no activity to kind of place that security control within. So then you need to define and build a baseline and build the security controls on top of that. Versus if you're an established and larger firm, you most likely have these standard processes and routines in place.
Okay, but don't you think this standard process and the policies, right? Is it very necessary to implement, or is it necessary to have it, Or is there any way also, let's say we can just directly create a short practice and for specifically startups, right? Enterprise levels they does that, but what about specifically for startup that you can recommend, because there are a lot of startups who gonna hear this one, right?
Yeah.
And because and that also comes with the cost, right? Because
Hmm.
it's very critical to found the experts who having those credibility. For example, you already been certified with ISO and other credits with you. What about, so if you want to have that, so is there any quick best practice that they can follow, or they also, or they just want to do go with the regular policies, or the process there, it's already
Yeah.
there.
I would definitely say less is more. Start small and find the best ways and alternatives for you. If you're a really small company, maybe you're not at the size where you need clearly detailed processes because you don't have a big HR team recruiting people, if we take that example. So maybe just a basic checklist where you log the things that you want to make sure happens when someone is recruited to record that you're performing the necessary tasks, then that could be a very simple alternative.
Awesome, awesome, makes sense. You mentioned that you learned about ISO 22700 certification, right? So what are some of the important things that you learned during that certification, and uh, why uh, why you should do that? Like why anyone should do that?
So one of the main things I learned is that in the standard they use the word shall and they use the word should, and there's a huge difference in the meaning. So when the standard says shall, you have to do it, and when it says should, it's up to you to risk assess and kind of identify based on your company if that control or measure is needed. So that was a big one, and I think that's one of the biggest misunderstandings with the standard, that you should do this, you should do this, and think that you have to do it all, but in reality you don't. The other thing is the 27001, the standard clauses themselves, versus 27002, which is the Annex A with all the security controls you need to assess to implement. That the standard itself, that's what gives you guidance on how to build a functional information security management system that you can operate in a structured way. And when
Mhm.
you build and get that to work and operate automatically, you'll implement the controls as you go along based on the risk assessments done for your company on your assets.
Okay, so is it on software and hardware on both, or it just have a in a or just any specification?
Yeah, so ISO 27001 is information security, so it covers both cyberspace and beyond. So pretty much anything. So it's structured into organizational control. So what should you as a company have in place to be secure? Physical security controls,
Mhm.
technical security controls, and then people security controls.
Okay. Okay. So let's say while you were learning this one, so is it hard while you learning this process, and when you actually when you consulting organization, small scale or medium scale or large scale, was it hard to implement? Like what is the difference between the those scenarios when you learn that and when you actually implement that?
Yeah.
What is the difference?
No, so definitely practical experience is a huge advantage. It makes it easier to kind of understand how it's all connected and how it works.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. Okay, so do for example, let's say if anyone wants to go into cybersecurity domain, right? And let's say if you want to go in this information security categories, right? So what are the necessary skill they should have, or is this big like if you want to differentiate between beginners, intermediate, and advanced? So what would be your ultimate guide?
I'm not sure I fully understood. So,
Okay, so basically, let's say if before doing this certification, right?
yeah.
ISO 27001. So what would be the prerequisite if anyone wants to enter into this domain? right? So what would
Yeah.
be the prerequisite? What are the things they should know? Does they should have the knowledge of networking or the other security best practices, or is it just starting off in this particular category?
So the ISO 27001, to achieve that, the main competence area is GRC, so governance, risk, and compliance. So if that's the field within cybersecurity that you're interested about, you should look up material related to GRC. So like the general government of security controls, risk management, risk assessments, and yeah.
Okay, okay. And what do you, because since I was working with the companies and specific, some companies is European based, so and data protection, and this is very much curious, and every country has their own GDPR,
Yeah.
right? So how, when you implement that, for example, let's say talk about the email security, and the email data is very much important. So how, what do you think, like when people applying the policies for specifically for data privacy, data security, what are
Mhm.
the things that should they keep in mind based on the continent? Let's say it's India, right? So there's a different GDPR, different policies, right? So what are the key things that they should taking care of when they actually having this data privacy and data security policies on board?
I think an important thing is to not just look online and find loads of other policies and think you need to match these, and instead think yourself clearly about the entire information flow, or the flow of personal information, from how do you collect it, like how do you gather this data, where do you store it, do you transfer it any places, all the way up to the deletion routines. So the whole life cycle of the information or the personal data, think about that in all the aspects, and then think about how do you secure and protect this information throughout the life cycle. And based on that and the measures you are taking, that's also how you govern this data, and that's what your policy should be based on.
Right, right. So, does this is I'm sure it is differ from the country to country base and continent to continent base. So, just out of curiosity, like were you the equal curious when you started and think about to pursue in the cybersecurity domain? So, what's your start point when you thought that I wanted to enter into this domain?
Yeah. So I studied computer engineering, and my bachelor assignment, we were three groups where we were
Mhm.
set to create a fictional company. So create a company and then configure and set up their network and equipment. So we did that for the first half of the bachelor. And then the second half of the bachelor, we were trying to hack and steal as much information as we could from the other groups. So you got to work both on the defensive side and first try to think out how should I secure my company, the information, what security control should I have on the devices, how should I configure the network, and then you went into a totally different mindset of how could I attack or misuse these other companies. And then I really got my eyes open to cybersecurity. I had
Mhm.
always thought that it was way more complex and harder to learn. But in reality, there was so much material and information available. So, for example, we used Kali Linux for the hacking part. So that's an operating system, and it has over 300 pre-built-in tools that you can just
Yes,
test and
yes.
use. So we could like hack the Wi-Fi password at home, and there was so much we could do with like no competence within the field prior to doing this bachelor. And then when I was done with my studies, I joined a startup focusing on AI, and we were going for enterprise customers. And with that, it came really high requirements towards security, and one of them being that the company needed to become ISO 27001 certified. So then I kind of took that opportunity and just had the motivation to learn, and was able to do it with success.
I think whenever anyone start in specifically in security, Kali Linux is one of the most common factor, and even I started when I was my area of expertise in application and the server security. And there's so many network tools of which pre-built over there. But is first thing, having into cybersecurity domain is so fascinating, not for us, but the people who are not in the cybersecurity domain. For
Yeah.
them, it's very fascinating because they're hacking and this are terminology. This sounds very fascinated. So let's say when you are doing this study and when let's say you hacked a Wi-Fi, you just for testing or just gathering the information. Have any of your friends just came and said, "Hey, can you hack this Google account? Can you hack this Facebook account?" But that happens to us like so many times. People just came and then, "Hey, I want to hack this Google account. How can I do that? I want to hack a Facebook account. How can I do that?" Because there's so many sensitive areas also are there, right? Where people want to learn that they should do so. So we were very curious at that time to very made sure like what information we need to share, because we have this motto called you should know hacking, but there is no hacking. So yes, do you have any such where this kind of incident that happened, or let's anyone comes to you and how you actually let's answer them, or what's your area of to address them, how you address them?
Yeah, no, that's a really common thing, and same with studying computer engineering and working in IT prior to that. Like automatically, your family and friends like IT guru for anything, even though you may not have all that detailed competence.
Yes, 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 absolutely. So when you did ISO 2701 and then you have this another certification, right? So what is the difference between them? Let's
Yeah,
say if you want to just put it in the pointer wise.
yeah. So ISO 27001, it's an older standard that is way more recognized towards information and cyber security. And then ISO 27701, that's a new standard that came out in 2020. So, in order to achieve that certification for your company, you need to first achieve the ISO 27001 for information security. And then the new standard is based on uh, protecting personal information and privacy. So it's really related to GDPR and these other regulations now that have been created to protect personal information, as privacy is a human right.
Yes, of course,
Uh,
privacy is human rights. Yes.
yes. And it includes controls both for when you act as a data controller and for when you act as a data processor. And it's a really nice standard to pursue if you already have a functional information security management system. As like
Mhm.
with GDPR, there's no way that you can just like call up the authorities and get them to come to your company and kind of give you a stamp like, hey, yes, you're compliant with GDPR. But like
Mhm.
getting the certification for this privacy standard, that's the closest thing you can get as a clear evidence to your customers or other interested parties of your company that states that, hey, we operate in accordance with global best practice for protection of personal information, both when we're acting as data controller and when we're acting as data processor.
Okay, okay. Yeah, of course, because having this compliance, having this, the compliance is done can also get credibility that whatever the data that we have, whether you are a product-based company or services company, your customers or your clients should know that how you are actually using their data. Talking about the data, there are so many SaaS companies specifically, and they some of the company miss to have the database compliances, which is also most important because when you have a SaaS-based product,
Hmm.
you have multiple customers, and what happens, especially in cybersecurity cases, let's say if you don't have the distributed database structure, since you have multiple customers who are using your product, right? But if we don't have a distributed data structure and distributed database compliances, and if someone got hacked to your system, so if one user database got hacked, they will get access to all their other customers, right? So what do you think, what should be the approach when companies, like specifically SaaS companies, when they structureize their database, so what are the compliances they should follow, right? Because because it should be like if in a one umbrella, if there are multiple customers, all
Mm,
the database, all the they have to have an independent database, right?
mm,
And for that also they have to have the compliance, like Oracle always Oracle also provide the compliance certificate for that. Okay, your compliance is done, and they specifically person who come check your the all the necessary things which you actually implement in your data or not, hashing is there or not, encryption is there or not. So according
mm.
to you, what are the best practices that as a data compliance, database compliance company should follow?
So, of course, it depends on the sensitivity of the data. If it's very sensitive, I would advise to split it up, have virtual private clouds or something to fully segregate the customer data. But there are loads of other alternatives, and like the main principle is like limit collection and processing. So only like gather the data that you really need, and also, if there's some data you may need the stats for or other factors, maybe you don't need to actually see the data. So you could use anonymization or partially mask out sensitive data. That could also be some alternatives. And then, of course, like do the assessments to ensure that it's properly secured based on the needs, just like with authentication, like how do you reach it, strong passwords, encryption, or you could even use IP allow listing as an extra layer of security to like limit the limit the areas where your solution or the data could even be reached. So there's
Right,
a lot of
right,
controls and alternatives, but I think the main thing is to do like solid, good, and proper risk assessments to really identify
right.
what controls you need, and also to ensure that you start implementing the right security controls. So focus on
Right.
those first, and then you can continuously improve and further secure it.
Right, right, absolutely. And you mentioned about authentication, and there is authorization as well, because now they were more implementing the identity and access management policies, like who should have what kind of access, right? So that's the best way, and they use tokens to just see whenever the request comes whether it's authorized or not. So for that, they having a distributed method where so many companies have implemented solution for the identity and access management, right? It's
Mm.
also one of the part of security. So, but what do you think, how much identity and security management is important, because it's that's in the front end side, right, not in the back end side? So how much it is important?
Well, it depends like on the context and the company. But if
Hmm.
it's really sensitive data, then I would definitely secure it. And often, like digital two-factor authentication can be a bit risky too, or misused through phishing or malicious attempts. So YubiKeys are also a great alternative because then it's also something physical that you have, especially if it's toward like root access to the servers or.
Okay, do you think passwordless authentication, because we have two FFOs, then we got multiple MFA, multi-factor authentication, and now we have passwordless authentication. Do you think passwordless authentication is also secure way to, because some of the banking sector also now started adopting that, but not everyone, because they still not go with the compliances, and a lot of other factors are there. I've read it couple of one or two use cases. So what do you think about the specifically for passwordless authentication?
I think it's super interesting and definitely a new trend. So it will be interesting to see how it falls out. I think like the main thing is if we look at the history back and how much quicker and how much less time is required now to hack passwords, and what was considered like a long and complex password just some years ago is something that could be hacked in minutes now. And the cyber criminals are escalating and becoming better and better themselves too. And we're kind of at the point where, well, of course, you can use a password manager to more easily
Mhm.
remember and manage your own passwords, but it can be hard to have these super long and complex passwords for all accounts. And then also remembering all these passwords, and especially too, since you should have unique passwords for each account, then it can become really hard to remember. And then what ends up happening is that employees will not follow these rules. So even though you say you need to have a separate password for each account, but if the password also needs to be so complex and hard, it's just like inhumane to kind of expect someone to control that. So then
Yes.
definitely offer a password manager or look at some non-password authentication methods.
Yes. They implemented SSO as well, single sign-on, where in the company there is a multiple application that you need to sign in every single day. So nowadays company has this single sign-on where with one single instance, of course they have to maintain such authentication levels, but with
Mm.
that you can actually access the multiple applications, so you don't need to log in every time, because that's
Mm.
frustrating, because you cannot maintain the password for every, because some has the 30 days of expiry, some has 60 days of expiry, and most as a human tendency we try to use the password which we can remember very easily, but that's not the good case to have those passwords. But
Mm.
what do you think, according to what do you think about the SSO, which now companies are adopting and having implementation, right?
Yeah, I think single sign-on is fantastic. Also, kind of gives safety to the in-house security people, because then let's say you're using Google for your single sign-on, then you can enforce your password policies, you can monitor the strengths, you can enforce two-factor authentication, and then you ensure that this is met throughout other systems you may use or other suppliers you may acquire as a company. An important thing I want to mention there is that you can have the full single sign-on when, like, if you procure an external system, you can have the full single sign-on where you can only log in using single sign-on. But so
Mm.
many solutions offer this thing called the social connect, where it's not like
Right.
full single sign-on. So yes, you have the option like log in with Google or log in with Facebook or whatever it may be, but then you also have the option to log in with your regular username and password. And then it can be easy to set like a very weak password for your login, because usually you just click login with Google. But then these other credentials could be compromised. So just something to kind of look out for and be aware of.
Yes, but that's kind of, again, as I said, that human tendency. Like when you see sign in with Facebook or a Google or say GitHub, right? So there's a point of the easy way option, and what normal people does. Let's say when we installing the software, they just do install, then click next, 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 next. We don't read the information. What are the terms and conditions? They are actually agreeing to do
Mm,
that. Similarly, when they do that, when they click on with GitHub or let's say Google, so what are the information they are gathering by signing up with that particular one? And people mostly don't know that when to do that, they will ask you like what are the information they're asking for, and you have options to disable that. But they just click and done, where
definitely.
they will get access to their calendar. Lot of other information will be there, so they can use that data to train their algorithm, right?
Yes.
Yes. So what
Yeah, and
people
they
tend to
can like take full ownership to this data. Like you, there's so much text to read, so people just click accept. And I think it was so interesting because the new season of Black Mirror that was recently released on Netflix, one of
yes,
like the core messages in one of the episodes was exactly that, how we're like using all these online services and we're just accepting to terms and conditions without really reading them or knowing what we're accepting to. And when it comes to the case or at the end of the day, like the company or the provider that you accepted to give your rights to, they have evidence that you have accepted to this. The fact that you didn't bother to read it is not their problem. But I think like in general there should be a better way to handle and manage this, because how connected we are now, how much we're using the internet, all these different services. Like, who in the world has time to sit and read all these terms and conditions?
right,
You could
right.
just see, like, with when ChatGPT came, so many users, like what was it, like over a million users in 6 days. I bet like pretty much none of them read the terms and conditions. And in the first release terms and conditions, it was specified that like any information you write or give to ChatGPT, like they can take ownership and use that data however they may like.
Yes, yes. There is an option in the setting that share that what are the data that you're entering, it will use that data to train their algorithm. And the other good example is recently Thread released, right? And it got so many user directly jumped in there using their Instagram account. But later on, when they see, a lot of people put out a post on the Twitter and so many social media forums or the engagement forums, that if you removed, means they control all the data, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or the threads. And if you remove the threads, it will automatically remove your Instagram, every. So what do you want to say on that? Because now it is the most highlighted point. It's in very trending, right? When people are going into direction, they don't care. So I have two questions. What do you think about that? And second is, uh, everyone is trying their best to raise an awareness, right?
Mm.
So what were the things are missing? First, where is it that awareness is not enough, or second, that people really don't care?
Maybe it's a mix of both.
Both.
And I think like a main thing, and that applies to like all social media or platforms, or to think a bit about what you're sharing online. Like ever since the introductions of social media, there's been a big shift where people are so sharing like so many details and informations about themselves, but like knowing as soon as you put it online, there is a risk that it could end up in some other places or get into the wrong hands. To kind of be mindful and aware of that. And I think one of the complex things with AI is that even though we understand it's AI, it's such a new technology, so it can be easy to maybe open up. Like let's say you're lonely, or there's like these things you're constantly thinking about, and you don't feel that you have any friends or someone to talk to about it. Of course it can be easy to like share your deepest and darkest secrets with this new AI friend that like all of a sudden popped up in your Snapchat account. And like it can be really easy. I was having lunch with one of my friends right
Mhm.
after the AI friend in Snapchat had appeared.
Okay.
And she was telling me, like, as soon as it came during Easter break here in Norway, she had been like talking to it a bit and asking questions. And then she had stopped and been like, thought that I need to stop asking so many questions. Like, you must be bored with me. And then it's like, it's just a computer, it's just an algorithm. And even though we know that, it's kind of hard to differentiate when it communicates and gives you individual responses. Somehow it feels like it's more than just a system. And I think that balance is where it becomes risky too, with the type of information about yourself that you actually will be sharing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think these people think this as a future, but I strongly think this is it's just trending at that particular point of a time. So that's the reason, people starting and overwhelmed, and then they try to consume more information. And you rightly said about what kind of information you share on the which your social media that you would. I would like to share one recent case which happened in India. Right. So what happened? So there was one family who was very one of my member is very active on Facebook. Right. Specifically, they use Facebook or other social media, and they were traveling to somewhere. Let's say traveling to some places where, for small vacation or something. So they shared over there that, hey, I'm traveling to these places for vacation with my family. Posted there, and then people started commenting that, hey, happy journey, and then someone asked that when you are going to come back. So that guy answered that I'll be back in 4 days. Means, now two things he got: that first, this particular person and the family is not here, they are traveling. Second, now they got to know that they are not here for next 4 days. So this information was only conveyed in the public platform. And what happened is, like, when they got back, there was someone already stole from their houses, knocked it, and so this what happened. And then they investigated, and they found out where this information got leaked. They found out that information leaked from the social media, where
Yeah.
they are the only one who conveyed this information, maybe on the conversation manner, because that way, I think that you can also consider as social engineering, where with this way people started gathering the information, right? So uh, what do you think, what kind of advice that you can give? What are things you should use social media, but I think it's better to aware what are the things you can avoid doing on social media. So if you wanted to give any tips, what are those?
Don't overshare.
That's
Less
the
is
first.
more. And like honestly, we've gotten so used to social media and sharing so much. But ever since all this new development with AI and especially deepfake technology, I think like sharing just like pictures or even your voice, like we're speaking here now, there's so many potential misuses of just that. I constantly keep reading these cases now where people have been called up. Like I read about this woman the other day, like a mom and her daughter. She was at this skiing trip with school or something, and then all of a sudden she had received like a phone call, and like she heard her daughter voice, and the daughter was like crying and super scared, saying like she's been kidnapped. And then all of a sudden this guy took the phone and told the mom like, we have your daughter, transfer $1 million by the like in 4 hours, or like we'll drug her, we'll rape her, like do all these things. So the mom was like in full panic, and luckily she had some other friends around that kind of like started to contact their children to see like what has happened, what's going on. And then they found out the daughter was still there in the mountains skiing. So somebody had like found an audio or something of her voice and manipulated it and used the deepfake technology to like call and trick the mom. And this also is like such a new mindset that comes with so many risks, because if your parents call you or a good friend and you recognize their voice, you've never stopped to think before, like, hey, is this really my mom calling? I'm not so sure, right? Because like it's your mom's voice, you know it's your mom. But like with these new technologies now, you kind of need to like stop and think about the information that's kind of being given and think if yeah, it maybe could be fake. And that's pretty scary. Just like the Tom Cruise deepfake videos that's been
Yes,
going viral now. Like it's
yes,
so realistic. I was
yes.
I was so shocked. I'm impressed when they started to come out, because the technology have come such a long way, and there's
Mm.
like of course loads of benefits, but like us working in cybersecurity, it's really easy to see all the potential and all the ways it could be misused.
Right,
And there's the
right.
thing why you need like the continuous awareness, not just have like awareness, like, okay, you're onboarded to a new firm, you do this compliance training, and then you're kind of done. No, it needs to be continuous. Like, you need to stay on top of what are the newest threats here and now. Like, what do we need to make sure our employees are aware of?
100%, 100%. And I've seen, like, I think the day by day when the technology is going to be increased, this kind of a things also is going to increase, because nowadays people started using such a realistic scenarios. I'll tell you one, the trending which is happening right now. So the DHL courier, right? DHL is a worldwide courier, where people
Yeah.
shipping the parcel and stuff. And since we working in this domain, and we'll get lot of parcel, and if you parcel from one country to another, you have to go from the customs, right? So I've been getting to so many parcel from the different companies, as a part of the community or the company. So what recently started is, now they started called it's called DHL scam. So let's say you will get a call that, hey, you got a there's a automated call. There's no in-person call. Automated call saying you missed your DHL parcel, and now it's stuck with the custom. Please please enter the 9 to talk to our customer executive. Now, the person like me who used to get regular this kind of parcel, so I will
Mm.
assume, okay, there might be chances that I get a parcel and I'll be most traveling, so I might not be to home, so it went back. There's no information for that. So just for tracks, and I was already aware of this scam is going on. So I just click on 9, and what they were saying that, hey, yes, they ask your name, and they try to research about it information. Yes, so yes, your parcel got stuck with the one of the local police, right? And they found some illegal items in that one. So now you have to, you have to come over here, you have to pay this much of fine, otherwise you will be into big trouble. There will be actions will taken on this one. i I just heard their interactions, and then I told that it doesn't make sense, but I just told that don't do this, because I am into this field. Like, just I was thinking about how many of people like me who are not that much aware, since we are in this domain, but those who are not in domain, how much they are going to scam. And this is the latest trending scam which
Yeah.
happening worldwide, and they're using the real scenarios, because anyone could get the parcel, right? If
Mm.
you are working and you're working in some US based company, so they will send you your laptop or some other goodies. Chances
Mm.
that you think, okay, yeah, I might got some parcel, and then you think, oh my, to uh, just to avoid that trouble to being into that zone, you just follow what they are trying, and just give the money whatever they're asking for, right? I just and we I tend to just do that just to know how much this is true, and just to use this scenario, and just convey this to any of my talks or the session where I go to, just to, and I record that to just
Yeah.
give them an example. See, this is what you should aware of.
Yeah.
Yes. So did you come across, are you aware of this scam?
Oh yeah, yeah. These are super popular also here in Norway. And
Okay.
yeah, they're becoming more and more legit, and that's also kind of the scary part, that so many people will fall for such scams, whether it's by SMS or email, and you'll see these logos, and it will be towards like shipping and package you're receiving. And I think some of the scariest ones are when it's towards like your bank, like, oh, your bank ID is about to expire. Just click here to
Yes.
renew it. And actually, you're giving away your bank ID and log into your financial data assets. That's pretty scary.
It is scary. And one, I don't know how, because let's say if you have bank account, so they always mention that never share your customer ID. Even when the bank representative or the customer care also, when they ask, still don't share.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, that when you actually, when someone call and they ask, we directly share.
Hmm.
So what I've seen, like when you are in work or some any other some zone, and someone asks, you directly give that information, and at that time you don't strike that what you're actually giving. You should
Yeah.
not give it to, right? So what? So in a forensic manner, because this comes under the forensic. So what do you call this state? Because I am not able to recall. But yeah, this is somewhere if people think as psychological, they use this one,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. No. No, definitely super super scary. And I think like the main thing is to kind of be aware, don't share your sensitive information, and don't and then check through another information provider or another source to kind of validate, and
Right.
share your awareness with grandparents especially.
Yes, yes. So I have my last question for you. So being into this cybersecurity consulting, what are the common issues that you see in company facing? Right, common issues that company actually facing, and what are the ways they are trying to mitigate it, or what are the ways they can mitigate that?
I think a main thing now is like third party risk. We're using so many different providers. Like all companies are using so many providers to kind of manage, handle, process, store, and use their data. And it's about ensuring like not only the security within your own company anymore. Like you need to validate and follow up with all these vendors. So definitely towards vendor management, I think is one of the main things that can be a pretty heavy process when you're
Yes.
using a bunch of different systems.
Right. And let's say if the last one, that if anyone wants to pursue into this domain, so what are the five advice that you can give to them?
Five advice?
Yes. For
Yeah.
anyone wants to just go into this cybersecurity domain, so what are the five advice that you can give it to them to get started?
First, I would do some research and figure out a bit more what cybersecurity really is. As you said so well in the beginning, like it's split in so many different domains and there are so many different fields you can kind of excel in. Once you've done that, I think one thing is to follow then the related hashtags and other people on LinkedIn, as LinkedIn is a fantastic community where people are eager to share experiences, competence, and learn from each other. And then towards GRC, if you want to get into that, I really personally liked ISMS Online, and Advisor also has some great articles. And then yeah, find see if you can find a coach or a mentor or someone that you really like that speaks your language, and follow them to continuously learn, and let's all help each other grow.
Of course, and raise as much as awareness that you can, because that's important. And thanks, Gray, for doing such amazing work by awareing people. And thanks for coming in. Finally we did it after so many conversation on the LinkedIn, and
Yeah,
I had a great time. I had a very insightful conversation. I'm definitely sure. I bet that people gonna get some good inside information from this one and then can follow along. I'm sure it definitely helps some way in other way to the people who are going to listen to this one. So thank you again for coming, and I glad to have you here.
it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much everyone who listening to this podcast. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay safe and take care. And make sure when you surf online, you know what you're doing it, because that's very important. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.